I'm Miss Sarah, and this is At Home Makerspace, where every week I show you how to make fun projects with things you can find at home. Today we are continuing our Arttober series, where I show you a new art project every week in October. This week we will be learning how to make art with colored salt. The first thing you'll need to do is color your salt. Here's how you do it. You'll need some salt, some liquid watercolor or food coloring, and some small plastic bags. Start by pouring some salt into each of your plastic bags. You'll want to make sure that you have one plastic bag for each color salt that you plan to make. Since I've decided to make 3 different colors of salt, I'm going to be prepping 3 bags. And as far as how much salt you want to put in each bag, that'll really depend on what kind of project you plan to make with your salt. So keep watching all of our project ideas to help you get a better sense of how much salt you'll need. Next, we can add some color, and I'm going to start by putting some liquid watercolor into my bag. I'm going to put about 10 drops, but if you want a really pale color, you can put fewer drops, and for a really deep, rich color, you'll want to put more drops. Okay, so I'm going to set that one aside for a moment and grab some food coloring to color my other 2 bags of salt. And in case you're wondering why I'm setting it aside instead of mixing it up right away, I found that letting it sit for a bit actually helps the color to distribute better later on. Alright, so now I'm going to do the same thing using my food coloring. I'm going to put about 10 drops of food coloring into my salt. And again, you can change up how much food coloring you put in depending on how deep you want your color to be. And we're going to set that one aside as well. And another piece of advice is that if you're not sure how many drops of food coloring you need to create the color you want, I would start with just a few drops and see what the color looks like. If it's not quite dark enough, you can always add more food coloring. Alright, so now that my 3rd bag is done, I'm going to let that sit and show you how to mix up the first bag that we did. It's really simple. We're just going to squish it around in the bag until all of the color distributes into the salt. And this may take a little while. You'll notice that some of the salt gets stuck in the corners and you have to shake it around a little bit in order to get all the color distributed. But just keep mixing and pretty soon you'll have your colored salt. Once you've finished mixing all your colors, you may want to grab a small bowl to transfer your salt into. Your salt may be a little damp from the coloring, so transferring it to the bowl will help it to air dry a little bit before you use it. I let my salt dry for about 15 minutes. And that's how you make colored salt. Now some of you might be wondering if you can color white sugar using the same technique. And you absolutely can, but my one piece of advice is that if you are going to be coloring sugar, I would make sure you use food coloring instead of the watercolor. This is because sugar is a lot more tempting to young children, and you want to make sure that you use a coloring that is food safe, like food coloring. Alright, so now I'm going to be showing you 3 art projects that you can make using your colored salt or your colored sugar. First up, I'm going to show you how to make a painting using glue. You'll need some paper, a bottle of white glue, colored salt, and some spoons. Start by drawing your picture with your white glue. Since it can be tricky to get the glue to come out in a nice smooth line, I do find it easier to use a new or pretty full bottle to make your design. So once you have your design drawn out with the glue, you can take your colored salt and put the colors on top of the glue where you want that color to be. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the green and put that up here at the top where the stem of my pumpkin is. Now I'm using a spoon to add the salt to my picture, but you could also just grab a pinch of salt between your fingers and add it to your picture that way. The main trick here is to make sure that you only put the green salt where you want the green to be on the picture. Alright, so now I'm going to switch over and start adding the orange to the rest of my pumpkin. Once you've added all the salt, then you'll want to set your painting somewhere so that the glue can dry. When it's dry, you'll want to shake off the excess salt. So I'm going to grab a small bowl and just start shaking and so that the extra salt falls into the bowl. You'll want to be fairly gentle still while doing this. You don't want to knock all of the salt off, so just give it kind of a gentle pat or shake to knock the extra off. All right, and there is my finished picture. Next, I'll show you how to make some art with a spray bottle. You'll need some paper, some colored salt and spoons, a spray bottle filled with water, and something to protect your table like an old rag. I'd also recommend you do this project somewhere where you can let your paper sit undisturbed to dry overnight. Start by sprinkling your salt onto your paper. Once again, you can use a spoon like I am, or you can grab a pinch with your fingers and sprinkle it on the page. I would recommend doing about 2 or 3 different colors for this project, so I'm going to go ahead and switch and add my second color to the picture. And when I'm all done with that, I'm going to go ahead and grab my spray bottle, which is filled with water, and here is where the magic happens. Begin to spray your painting, and as you do, the water will mix with the colored salt, the salt will dissolve, and you'll be left with a really cool spray of color. Now, keep spraying water until you like how your final picture looks. Now let your picture dry. Mine was pretty full of water, so I actually let mine dry overnight. And as your picture dries, something else cool happens. The salt crystals begin to reform, creating really cool texture on your painting. And finally, some of you may be familiar with sand art, where you layer colored sand in a clear container so that it creates a really fun pattern. Well, now I'm going to show you how you can do the same thing with your colored salt to create something like this. You'll need some colored salt with spoons and a small clear container with a lid. Since this project uses a lot more salt than the others, here's a trick for getting the perfect amount of colored salt. Start by pouring the salt into your clear container. You'll want to pour it all the way to the top. You can now pour the salt from your container into your plastic bags to make the perfect amount of colored salt for this project. So let's go ahead and open up our jar and we can begin to layer our colored salt. Because we need big scoops of salt for this project, I would recommend using a spoon to help scoop the salt into your jar. But if you do happen to have a really narrow jar where the top is really narrow, you can also use a funnel to help get the salt into the jar. All right, so you can see here I'm adding my second layer and I'm going to use my spoon to help flatten it out a bit. And once that's done, I'm actually going to change the camera angle so you can see what it looks like from the side. See the colorful layers that are forming? Continue to layer your salt into your jar until you get all the way to the top. When your salt is all the way to the top, go ahead and screw your lid on tight. You want to make sure it's really full so when you move the jar, it doesn't shift. And there you have your final product. And those have been 3 art projects that you can make using colored salt. Of course, once you make your colored salt, you can have fun experimenting and seeing what other kinds of art projects you can come up with. If you do make a piece of art, whether it's following one of my projects or coming up with one of your own, we would love to see it. So please share a picture with us at the library. You can do so through our Facebook at www.facebook.com/FHCPL, through our Instagram. Our handle is @FHCPL, or you can send us an email. Our email address is makerspace@finleylibrary.org. We hope you enjoyed learning how to make art with something as simple as colored salt. If you're enjoying these art projects, be sure to return next week for the last in our Arttober series. See you then! Bye!